By noon, the sun was bright enough to make the whole city look honest, but the woman sitting across from me had tears in her eyes like she was hiding a storm no daylight could reach. Her fingers trembled around the glass of water, her smile broke before it could fully appear, and then she whispered the words that changed everything between us: "I can't afford this date." For a moment, the cafe sounds faded, the clatter of plates, the laughter near the window, the soft music above us, everything disappearing into the silence between her shame and my answer. And when I finally spoke, she stared at me as if no one had ever treated her pain gently before. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the kind of love that begins when someone chooses compassion over pride, please like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Ancient Truth for more heart-touching stories. Her name was Saira Wren, a name that sounded delicate, almost like something written on old paper, but there was nothing delicate about the life she had survived. She had arrived at the cafe 12 minutes late, breathless and apologizing too much, wearing a pale blue dress that had clearly been ironed carefully but still carried the tiredness of too many washes. Her hair was pinned back with a small silver clip, and her eyes kept moving toward the menu prices the way a frightened bird watches the sky for danger. I had noticed it from the first minute, but I did not want to embarrass her. I only smiled, asked about her day, and pretended not to see the quiet math happening behind her eyes. My name was Rafiq Vale, and I had spent most of my adult life pretending money did not matter because I finally had enough of it. But I had not always been that man. I knew what it felt like to count coins before ordering food, to choose water because tea was too expensive, to laugh when hungry so nobody would notice. Years ago, before my small design company found success, I had once stood outside a bakery at midday, smelling bread I could not buy, telling myself that hunger was temporary and dignity was everything. So when Saira looked at the menu and swallowed hard, I understood the old enemy sitting beside her. It was not hunger. It was humiliation. The cafe was beautiful in an unfair way, with wide windows, golden sunlight, wooden tables, and flowers in glass jars. People came there to celebrate promotions, anniversaries, easy afternoons, lives that seemed untouched by emergencies. I had suggested it without thinking, remembering only that the pastries were good and the street outside was quiet. I did not know Saira had spent the morning choosing between paying her electricity bill and buying medicine for her mother. I did not know she had almost cancelled 3 times, then come anyway because she wanted one normal afternoon where she was not just someone's tired daughter, someone's overworked employee, someone always one bill away from breaking. At first, she tried to be cheerful. She told me about the bookshop where she worked, about an old customer who bought mystery novels but always read the ending first, about the stray cat behind the shop that refused every name except Captain. Her laugh was soft, real, and brief, like she was afraid joy might cost extra. I found myself listening more carefully than I had listened to anyone in months. There was no performance in her, no polished charm, no hunger to impress. She spoke as if truth was all she owned, and somehow that made her richer than everyone else in the room. Then the waiter came. I ordered coffee and a sandwich. Saira looked at the menu for too long. Her cheeks warmed. She turned the page, then turned it back, then closed it gently as if the prices had hurt her feelings. She said she was not very hungry. I said we could share something. She shook her head too quickly. The waiter waited with professional patience, and that made it worse. Finally, she ordered only water with lemon, and when he walked away, her eyes lowered to the table. I could have ignored it. Many people do. I could have protected myself from the awkwardness by pretending everything was normal. But there was something about the way her shoulders folded inward that reminded me of my mother in my childhood kitchen, smiling while skipping dinner so I could eat. So I asked quietly if everything was all right. She tried to nod. She tried to lie. But kindness sometimes makes people more honest than pressure ever could. Her lips trembled, and she said the sentence like it was a confession: "I am sorry, Rafiq. I can't afford this date." She expected disappointment. I saw it clearly. She expected me to lean back, to feel cheated, to think she had come for free food, to mark her as less than the women who could sit in bright cafes without fear. Her eyes were already preparing for rejection. That was the heartbreaking part. Life had trained her to apologize for struggling. But I did not feel pity for her. I felt anger at a world that made decent people ashamed of surviving. So I pushed my menu toward the center of the table and said softly that she had misunderstood one thing. This was not a test she had failed. This was lunch with someone who was grateful she came. I told her that years ago, someone once bought me a meal when I had nothing, and they did not make me feel small. They simply said, "One day, pass it on." Then I looked at her and said, "Today, let me pass it on." And when life is gentle to you again, you can pass it on to someone else. Saira did not speak. Her eyes filled slowly, not with dramatic tears, but with the exhausted kind that come when a person has been strong for too long and finally finds a safe place to put the weight down. She turned her face toward the window, blinking hard, watching people walk under the afternoon sun as if the whole street had become blurry. When she looked back at me, something had shifted. Not romance yet. Something deeper. Trust, perhaps. Or the first breath after drowning. I ordered enough food for both of us, but not in a grand way, not like a man showing off. Soup, bread, tea, and a slice of honey cake because she had looked at it for half a second longer than everything else. When it arrived, she hesitated before touching the spoon, and I began telling her the most embarrassing story I knew about myself, about spilling paint on a client's white carpet during my first design job. She laughed with a hand over her mouth, and little by little, she ate. The sunlight moved across the table. Her fear loosened. The cafe became less like a courtroom and more like a place where two people could simply be human. Over the next weeks, we met in daylight because Saira said evenings made her anxious, her mother needed help at night, and the buses were unreliable. So our dates became morning walks, lunch breaks in public gardens, cups of tea from street vendors, shared roasted corn near the park gates, and quiet conversations under trees while the city moved around us. I learned that her mother, Parveen, had once been a schoolteacher before illness bent her days into pain. I learned that Saira had left college in her final year to work full-time. I learned that she loved painting skies but had not bought colors in 5 years. She learned that I had money now but still kept old bus tickets in a drawer because they reminded me not to become arrogant. But love, if that is what was growing, did not arrive easily. Saira carried shame like a second shadow. Whenever I paid for something, she became quiet. Whenever I offered help, she resisted as if accepting anything would erase her dignity. One afternoon, outside a pharmacy, I saw her counting notes with trembling fingers. The medicine was more than she had expected. She told the pharmacist she would come back later, which we both knew meant she would not. I offered to pay, and she looked wounded, almost angry. She said she did not want to be someone's charity. The words struck me, but I understood them. Pride is sometimes the last coat a poor person owns. I told her she was not charity. She was someone I cared about. Still, she walked away from me that day, disappearing into the white heat of the afternoon, leaving me standing with my hand half raised and my heart heavy. For 3 days, she did not answer my messages. I thought I had lost her by trying to help too directly. On the 4th day, I went to the bookshop, not to pressure her, only to buy a book and leave a note. I found her arranging second-hand novels by the front window, her face pale with tiredness. She looked at me as if she had been waiting and fearing that I would come. I told her I was sorry for making her feel cornered. She said she was sorry for pushing me away. Then, in the quiet aisle between poetry and history, she told me the truth she had been hiding. Her mother's condition had worsened. Rent was overdue. The bookshop owner was kind but could not give her extra hours. She had begun selling her old paintings online for almost nothing, not because they were worthless, but because desperation never negotiates fairly. As she spoke, her voice stayed steady, but her hands betrayed her, gripping the edge of a shelf until her knuckles whitened. That was when I made a choice. Not to rescue her like some hero in a story, but to stand beside her without stealing her strength. I asked if I could see her paintings. She resisted at first, then took me to the small room behind the shop where she kept 3 canvases wrapped in brown paper. When she uncovered them, I forgot to breathe. They were skies, but not ordinary skies. One was a dawn over rooftops, the light breaking through laundry lines and satellite dishes. One was a storm above a hospital window. One was a golden afternoon over a street vendor's cart, so warm it made my chest ache. They were not just paintings. They were survival translated into color. I told her the truth, her work deserved to be seen. She smiled sadly and said people like her did not get exhibitions. I said people like her were exactly why exhibitions should exist. This time, I did not offer money. I offered a plan. My office had an empty front hall with white walls and good light. We could host a small daytime viewing, invite clients, neighbors, bookshop customers, anyone who loved art. She would set the prices. She would keep every rupee. My company would only provide the walls, tea, and chairs. She stared at me for a long time, searching for hidden pity. She found none. The day of the exhibition arrived bright and clear. Saira wore the same pale blue dress from our first date, but this time there was no shame in her posture. Her mother came in a wheelchair, wrapped in a cream shawl, her eyes shining with pride. The hall filled slowly, then all at once. People stood before Saira's paintings in silence, the good kind of silence, the one that means something has reached them. A woman bought the hospital window storm painting because she said it reminded her of the day her son recovered. An old man bought the rooftop dawn because he said it looked like his childhood. By late afternoon, every painting had a red sticker beside it. Saira stepped into the back corridor and cried where no one could see. I followed but kept my distance. She pressed both hands to her mouth, overwhelmed not only by the money, though it was enough to pay rent and medicine for months, but by the impossible realization that her pain had not been useless. It had become beauty. It had touched strangers. It had given back to her. When she finally turned to me, she said she did not know how to thank me. I told her she already had. She had shown me that dignity does not disappear in hardship. Sometimes it waits quietly, like sunlight behind a cloud. Months passed, and Saira returned to college part-time. Her mother's health stabilized. The bookshop began displaying small prints of her work near the register. My life changed too, though from the outside it looked the same. I worked, met clients, paid bills, answered calls. But inside, something had softened. Before Saira, I had thought generosity was something you gave after becoming successful. She taught me it was something you practiced so success would not make you empty. On the anniversary of our first cafe meeting, I took her back there at midday. The same windows shone with sun. The same wooden tables held other people's ordinary miracles. Saira laughed when she saw where we were going, but I noticed her eyes grow wet. We sat at the same table. This time, when the waiter brought the menu, she opened it calmly. She ordered tea, soup, bread, and honey cake. Then she reached into her bag, took out a small envelope, and placed it in front of me. Inside was a painting no bigger than my hand. It showed 2 cups on a cafe table, sunlight between them, and under the image she had written one sentence: "You did not pay for my lunch. You gave me back my place in the world." Near the end of that afternoon, something happened that neither of us expected. A young man at the next table sat frozen over his menu while a little girl beside him whispered that she was hungry. His face carried the same quiet panic I had seen in Saira's eyes. How one painful sentence on a sunny afternoon became the beginning of a love story, not because money solved everything, but because compassion entered the room before judgment could. Saira once believed she could not afford that date, but the truth was, the world could not afford to lose people like her. People who turn suffering into beauty. People who receive kindness with trembling hands and return it with a full heart. People who remind us that sometimes the most unforgettable answer is not grand, clever, or expensive. Sometimes it is simply this: you are not a burden, you are not less than anyone, and while I have enough today, you do not have to sit alone in your struggle.